In this video, let us try to solve a question that was asked in JM Economics paper of 2022. The question is like this: which of the following statements is correct for game A and game B? The statements are regarding Nash equilibrium. So let us try to find out the Nash equilibrium for game A first and then for game B. Okay. So for that, let me zoom this out. Okay. Now we have two players, Mary and John. Okay. Now let us see what happens if Mary chooses to go for movie. In this case, John has two options, either to go for movie or to go for football. Movie gives him 1 as payoff, football gives him 0 as payoff. Obviously 1 is greater than 0, so John will choose to go for movie. Okay. So for that, let me rub this out here. Okay. Now let us see what happens if Mary goes for football. Again, John has two options, either to go for movie or to go for football. Movie gives him 0 as payoff, football gives him 2 as payoff. Obviously, 2 is greater than 0, so John will choose to go for football. Okay, so for that, let me rub this out here and rub this whole stuff here. Okay. Now let us see what happens uh, if John chooses to go for movie. In this case, Mary has two options, either to go for movie or to go for football. Movie gives her 2 as payoff, and football gives her 0 as payoff. Obviously 2 is greater than 0, so Mary will choose to go for movie. For that, let us rub this out. Okay. Now let us see if John chooses to go for football. Again, Mary has two options, either to go for movie or to go for football. Movie gives her 0 as payoff, football gives her 1 as payoff. Obviously 1 is greater than 0, so Mary will choose to go for football. Okay, so what we have here, we can clearly see we have two numbers being underlined in two cells, so these two numbers to denote the Nash equilibrium. So Nash equilibrium in this case is movie and football. So we have two Nash equilibrium for game A. Okay. Now let us see game second. So in this case we have convex 1 and convex 2. Okay, let us see what happens if convex 1 do not confess. Okay, in this case convex 2 has two options, either do not confess or to confess. Do not confess gives him -1 as payoff. To confess, he gets 0 as payoff. Obviously convex 2 will choose 0 because 0 is greater than -1, so convex 2 will choose to confess here. Okay, so let us rub this out here. Now let us see what happens if convex 1 chooses to confess. Again, convex 2 has two options, either do not confess or to confess. Here you can see do not confess gives him -1 as payoff, -9 as payoff, sorry, and to confess he gets -5 as payoff. Obviously -5 is greater than -9, then convex 2 will choose to confess here. Okay, so let us rub this out here. Now let us see what happens if convex 2 chooses do not confess. In this case convex 1 has two options, either do not confess or to confess, and obviously you can see here do not confess gives him -1 as payoff, and to confess he gets 0 as payoff. Here you can see 0 is greater than -1, so convex 1 will choose to confess here. Okay, so let us rub this out here. Now let us see what happens if convex 2 chooses to confess. Okay, so in this case again convex 1 has two options, either do not confess or to confess. Again, do not confess gives him -9 as payoff, and to confess he gets -5 as payoff. obviously minus 5 is greater than minus 9, so convict 1 will choose to confess. Okay, let us rub this here. Okay, here you can see only one cell is there where both numbers are underlined. Okay, so we can say this game has only one Nash equilibrium, that is confess and confess. Okay, so what are the statements being given us? Let us try to see. So these are the statements, and we got for first game, we got for game A we got movie, movie and football. Football is Nash equilibrium. And for game B we got confess, and confess is Nash equilibrium. Okay, here you can see only only D option satisfies both the conditions. That is, in game A both movie and football represent Nash equilibrium, and in game B the Nash equilibrium is confess. Okay, I hope